Near any live human.
Ah, good idea. Well, I think we should probably get started. And I'm so happy today because I get to introduce Laura again. And she is one of my favorite people. And she's going to talk to us today about her recent book. That's a collection of wisdom stories from Tibet. And uh, she's also, celebrating, not still, but her other book about Zen and recovery. And so Laura seems to be on a roll now, and we're totally here to support that. She's, a lay entrusted Dharma teacher. She's, certified to teach, and she teaches lots of classes and leads lots of retreats and is very involved with recovery program and was a teacher for 35 years, which is really an accomplishment. So I'll let her tell you about her book. And thanks, Laura.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm Laura Burgess. My Buddhist name is Ryuko Eitai, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me. When I was about to retire from teaching kids after 35 years, coincidentally, there was a worldwide pandemic, and I wasn't anticipating that, but I taught online for the last few months of my teaching, and I so admire the teachers that have held down the fort during COVID. It's not easy to do that. I was really fortunate at a few months before I retired that Ivan Burgess, who is the leader of Shambhala Publications in Boulder, Colorado, he called San Francisco Zen Center and asked the abbot, David Zimmerman, do you know anybody who has taught kids for a long time and has practiced Zen for a long time and knows how to write? And to my good fortune, David said, yeah, Laura Burgess. So I met with Ivan, and he happened to be in San Francisco a little while after that. And we met in the courtyard at Zen Center, had a really wonderful connection with each other. And he said to me, well, why don't you write a sample story and send it off? So I did that, and then I didn't hear anything, for 2 or 3 months. And I started thinking, well, I guess they didn't really like my story. And then one morning I got a call from Ivan, and he said, Laura, we're in a business meeting here at Shambhala. We sent you a contract. Were you unhappy with it or something? And I said, well, I never got it. You know what? It was in this, it was, I only had a Hotmail account, and it was in my spam folder. So that was embarrassing and alarming. And that day I got a Google account. So that was, I love teaching kids. And I loved it right up to the last minute. And I knew it was going to be really hard for me to stop teaching children every day. And I miss them so much, but I do run into them around town. And some of you might have heard this story, but I went through breast cancer last year, and I'm okay now. But when I went in to get my 5 days of radiation, I heard a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and there's a young man standing there, and his name tag said Saji. And I said, Saji, that's a really unusual name. There was a boy in my class the first year I ever taught in 1986 named Saji, and he said, yeah, it's an unusual name. Was he Palestinian? I said, yeah. And he said, what school was that? And I said, Alvarado Elementary. He said, Mrs. B, you were my teacher. And it was just one of those miraculous moments when I needed help, and he was there to help me. And we laughed and cried and hugged each other. And he said, it means a lot to me to help you the way you helped me when I was little. And when we were walking to the radiation room, he was saying, she was my teacher, she was my teacher. And he was there every single day. So I really call that a miracle of both practice and recovery. If I hadn't gotten sober before I became a teacher, I doubt that I would have survived. And I was a different kind of teacher because of my Buddhist practice. So having this opportunity with Shambhala to write children's books and then later to submit my book on Zen and recovery and have them accept that has been a really wonderful second act for me, or maybe let's say third act. um, I want to share a little bit about how this book came to be. This is Wisdom Stories of Tibet. This is a snow leopard up at the top. Is that mirror writing, or do you see it?
It's great.
Okay. Well, I was invited to write this book with the help of Lama Chonam, and he's a wonderful Lama. He lives in Ashland part of the year and in Southern California during the wintertime. And he left Tibet when he was 22. And we had so much fun. I haven't met him in person. We worked on Zoom. And he would tell me stories from his childhood and from his Tibetan culture. You know, Tibetan stories are, it's an oral tradition. And he told me the story of Gesar, King Gesar, who was this Buddhist king of Tibet. And that is an oral tradition. People can tell those stories for days at a time. So what I was able to do was pluck out some interesting things about Gesar, focusing on when he was a very mischievous little boy and how he became king. Now, in the story of Gesar, he had to win a horse race in order to become king, and he'd been exiled from his country by a jealous minister who wanted his own son to become king. So he got rid of Gesar. But when he heard about this horse race, the man that would be King Gesar went up to the mountains to find a horse. And when he was up there, this mare came trotting up to him and said, "Please choose my son, because my son can talk and he can fly, and he'll help you win that race." Well, I thought it'd be sort of fun to have the horse be blue, you know, kind of a magical thing. So, you know, Lama Chonam would outline these stories for me, and then I would write the story with my own language and images. And one thing that was really important to me that I'm sure you'll understand is almost all the characters were male. And so throughout this process, I wanted to find times when I could choose the gender of a character and make them female instead. And luckily, there are many strong women characters in Tibet, and I was able to write stories about them. You know, at first in this story about King Gesar, I said I was going to have the horse that King Gesar chose be a mare. And Lama Chonam said, no, I'm sorry, a king would never ride a mare. So he had limits, you know. And he also said, you know, the horse isn't blue. And I said, oh, okay. So the horse can fly and the horse can talk, but the horse isn't blue. And he said, yeah, that's right. So, you know, he was sort of my sensitivity reader and my helping me make sure these stories had the teaching, the meanings of the stories that I could apprehend along with Lama Chonam, but also have fun with them and make them a little more lively for today's readers, you know, today's kids. Another thing that came up around King Gesar was when he was in exile, these warlords wanted to come and seek his advice, and he just intuited that they were coming. And so Lama Chonam said that he gathered with these warlords and gave them wine. And I said, well, you know, Lama Chonam, I don't drink alcohol myself, and this is a children's book, so I really don't want them to be drinking wine. Why don't we have them drink tea? And Lama Chonam, who had a wonderful sense of humor, said, how about juice boxes? And so for the kids, you know. So we had a good laugh about that. Now, not to brag, but I might be the only person you know who's had a Tibetan Lama teach me how to use WhatsApp. So, you know, he was going to France and he wanted to become able to communicate with me, so he taught me about how to use WhatsApp. I'd like to share a story with you today that I've called The Treasure. I titled it The Treasure because I think it encourages us as Buddhists to cultivate both wisdom and compassion. And in Mahayana tradition, Tibetan Buddhism and Soto Zen are both part of the Mahayana tradition, also called the Great Vehicle. And a characteristic of the Mahayana tradition is the the impulse and the vow to help all beings, not just oneself. We don't practice and we don't recover just for ourselves. We do it for all beings. And in the Mahayana tradition, both wisdom and compassion come up together. It's said they are like two wings. You can't fly with just one wing. And so you need two wings, the wing of compassion and the wing of wisdom in order to fly to freedom. In Buddhism, and I'm sure you've seen this figure, wisdom is represented by Manjushri, a kind of fierce-looking warrior who is said to cut through delusion with his sword. And he's the archetype of wisdom in Buddhism. And of course, Avalokiteshvara, who's a male character in India and a female character in China known as Kuan Yin. In Japan, she's known as Kanon. She is the archetype for compassion. And, it's said she has 1,000 eyes and 1,000 arms so that she can help all beings. Now, wisdom sees things as they truly are. Usually we see things through the gauze, of our preferences and our personal experiences and the ways in which we've been hurt. We bring all that often to our perception. And it's through the practice of sitting in meditation that we can cut through some of that subjectivity and see things as they truly are. Compassion opens our heart to other people. The word compassion literally means to suffer with. So rather than feeling sorry for other people, we suffer with them. We feel their pain because we share their humanity. And I think this is especially true in recovery, where, just like Buddhism, recovery is passed from warm hand to warm hand. And when I'm in a recovery meeting, I'm there because in 1935, two suffering alcoholics had a conversation and they wanted to help one another. And beyond that, they wanted to help all beings. The Buddha invited us to joyfully participate in the sorrows of the world. And I wish I could say I read that in a Buddha sutra, but it's something that one of Tony Soprano's girlfriends said to him when they were walking through the Bronx Zoo. I still think it's valid, though. So I really like to share this story with you because I think it teaches us about how wisdom and compassion come up together. Wisdom by itself can be a little bit cold, maybe even judgmental or harsh, when it's not tempered by compassion. Compassion, on the other hand, if it's not tempered with wisdom, can be kind of squishy and naive, a little too trusting. And I really loved working with this story that I'm going to share with you called The Treasure. One day, a father and his young son were flying kites in the foothills of the mountains where they lived. The boy's mother had died when he was a baby, and so the father and son only had each other. They loved each other dearly and were very close. In fact, the father called his son Norbu, which means treasure. As the kite bobbed against the bright blue sky, tails swirling and dancing on the breeze, Norbu and his father pulled on their kite strings. Norbu's father said, "I've raised you to have a loving and trusting heart. But my boy," and his eyes twinkled, "always keep one eye open." The boy thought about this for a moment and he was confused. "Father," he said, "what do you mean?" His father turned to him. "Even the kindest and most honest person can stumble onto the wrong path if they are tempted. So be careful, my son, for I know that your hard work will lead you to great wealth. Protect it." Just then, Norbu's best friend, Dedan, came running up the hill with his kite. Norbu and his father helped him launch it on the wind. Norbu grew up proud and strong. Schooled by his father in the wisdom of Guru Rinpoche, he learned to be strong, upright, and sincere. The years went by, and as the old man lay dying, he said to Norbu, "Remember what I told you long ago. Be kind and generous, but always keep one eye open." And with that, he closed his eyes and peacefully left this life. Norbu was a man now, honest and hardworking, trading in copper, salt, and brightly woven rugs. Missing his father, he worked so hard that he never seemed to have time to find a wife and raise a family. All his effort went into his business, and in this way he amassed the wealth that his father had predicted. One day, when Norbu was about to embark on a long journey, he thought of his father's words and of his friend Dedan. "Surely I can trust my best friend with my treasure," he thought to himself. So he took his 2 bags of gold nuggets to Dedan, saying, "I will be away for a month, and I don't want to leave this gold in my house where robbers might find it. Will you take care of it for me until I come back?" "Why, of course, my friend. We've known each other since we were boys, rolling hoops in the dirt. You can trust me completely." But Norbu didn't notice the gleam in Dedan's eyes as he took the bags of gold. A month went by and Norbu returned from his travels. He went to Dedan's house, where Dedan's daughter, Tsering, and his son, Jampa, were playing hide and seek in the bushes. Dedan sat on the front steps drinking a cup of tea. When he saw Norbu coming, he jumped up, spilling his tea on the ground. Norbu greeted Dedan and said, "My friend, I've come for my bags of gold. I hope you've taken good care of them." Dedan's shoulders slumped, and he turned a sad face toward Norbu. "I did my best, but a very strange thing has happened. Something very strange indeed. I had hid the gold in a box in the ground, and when I went to check on it, the gold had turned to sand." "That is strange," said Norbu. "Can I see?" So Dedan took him inside where the 2 cloth bags that had once held gold now held only sand. Dedan waited for his old friend to get angry, but to his surprise, Norbu just said, "Don't worry, my friend. I'm sure you did your best. Let's have a cup of tea." As the 2 sat on the steps of Dedan's house, sipping their tea and watching the children play, Norbu said, "You are so lucky to have such wonderful children. What a gift. I wish I had made time in my life to have a family like yours. Your wife and children are like jewels." Dedan felt sorry for his old friend. Maybe Norbu was lonely being all by himself. "How would you like the children to stay with you for a week? My wife and I have been wanting to visit the monastery on the other side of the lake. If you would take care of Tsering and Jampa, that would be a big help." "I would be delighted," answered Norbu. The children were happy to go with Norbu, who had always been like a favorite uncle to them. When they arrived at his house, Norbu cooked up a fine pot of thikpa, a delicious noodle soup. The next day, he went to the marketplace and bought 2 monkeys. He taught the older monkey to come when he called Jampa, and he taught the younger female monkey to come when he called Tsering, rewarding them with handfuls of walnuts. The monkeys were bright little things, and they learned quickly, and the children loved playing with them. One early morning, a week later, the children were still asleep upstairs in Norbu's house, and the monkeys were playing in the trees when Dedan came down the path. "I've come for my children," he called, seeing Norbu sitting on the steps of his house. Norbu's shoulders slumped, and he turned a sad face towards Dedan. "Oh, my friend, something very strange has happened. Something very strange indeed. I did my best to take care of your children, but while you were away, they turned into monkeys." Dedan couldn't believe his ears. That's impossible. Frantic, he called, Jumpa, Tsering. And the two monkeys, hearing their names, skittered down from the trees and danced around Dedan, chattering with excitement. Looking down at them, Dedan's eyes filled with tears. This is terrible. What will my wife say? Norbu, what can we do? Norbu stroked his chin and thought for a moment. Well, we're going to need a lot of gold if we're going to remove this curse. How much gold? Asked Dedan. Oh, about 2 bags ought to do it. Don't worry, Norbu. I know where I can get it. I will be right back. Dedan rushed back home, emptied the sand out of the bags, and replaced it with the gold nuggets that he had hidden in the box in the ground. Dedan returned with the gold and handed the 2 bags to his old friend. Norbu took the monkeys inside and led them upstairs, gave them some walnuts, and left them there to play. Then he gently woke the children and brought them outside into the sunshine. When Jampa and Tsering saw their father, they ran to him, hugging him. Norbu said, That did the trick, Dedan. The gold turned the monkeys back into your children. My treasures, Dedan cried, and he held his children in his arms. Dedan stood, and he and Norbu looked into each other's eyes. Dedan was embarrassed that he had been tempted and had done wrong. All at once he understood that Norbu had tricked him to get his gold back. In that moment, their many years of friendship were there with them, and in his heart, Norbu forgave Dedan. Suddenly, the friends burst out laughing. Let's have a cup of tea, said Norbu. And then I have a line at the end of each story, and this one is, family and friends are more precious than gold, and keep one eye open. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you. I want to tell you that the way this traditional story ends is with the monkeys being returned to Dedan. And that seemed incomplete to me. You know, I wanted Dedan to take responsibility for what he'd done. And I wanted Norbu to have the moral choice to forgive his friend. And I have many lifelong friends, you know, from different eras in my life. And we've been able to forgive each other through the years for various ways we've hurt one another. And so this line was so important to me to say, in that moment, their many years of friendship were there with them. You know, and I wanted the children to know that friends can have disagreements. I mean, this is a pretty egregious disagreement, but that friends can recover from betrayal and trust one another again. So I thought that story was a very good demonstration of wisdom, the wisdom of, you know, being cautious, a little bit cautious with people, and the compassion of being able to forgive. So thank you for your kind attention.
Oh, Laura, that was a best story. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. I'm sure I'm not alone. That you know, you've always been such a good storyteller, and I can't wait to get my hands on your book. It's I have it pre-ordered, but as I said in the invitation, I hope that you guys had a chance to read that if you order this book from Shambhala between February 25th and March 25th, you can receive a 30% discount with the code that I provided. But I'm going to put all this in the chat so in case you didn't get it the first time.
And you know, the code is really simple because this is Wisdom Stories of Tibet, and the code is WST30 for 30%. So WST30, but in what Cynthia told you, it'll take you right to the page on Shambhala where this book is listed. So, you know, I had so much fun working on this with Lama Chonim. He was so gracious, and I felt he was so open-minded about me wanting to change the genders of some of these characters so that women could be more represented. So another story that I really loved writing was originally called The Mouse King. It's another story about wisdom and compassion coming up together. But of course, I made it the Mouse Queen. So he was very generous in letting me play around with that. Now, when all the illustrations were done, and Lama Chonim and I went over them with the magnificent artist, Wen Su, who illustrated this book, he said to her, you know, I'm really sorry. He said, I know in Zen, you fold your robes. First you fold over the left side and then the right side. But in Tibet, we do it the other way. First we fold the right side and then we fold over the left side. And he said to the artist, that might seem like a small thing to you, but any Tibetan that sees this book will notice that right away, and it's going to bother them. And so she does so much research and so much attention to detail. She went through all of the illustrations, and there were many examples of robes folded the wrong way, and corrected all of them. So that's a testament to her wish to really have these illustrations be authentic. And I appreciated that. And I felt for her too, having to go back and change all of those.
Oh, thank you so much. We're going to sit for a few minutes, and when we come back, please, everyone, feel free to ask questions or make comments, and Steve will ring a bell, and we will go into Zazen and for about 10 minutes, and then he'll ring a bell, and we'll come back.